While Little Demon is about Satan and his daughter, the Antichrist, Chrissy's mother, Laura, is just as interesting as them, if not more so, with her having a large variety of spells and powers at her disposal. The series opens with Laura running into the woods, about to give birth, but preparing to kill the child with a magic glowing axe, in the invocation of Hephzibah. Hephzibah in the Bible is the wife of Hezekiah, as well as the mother of Manasseh, who are the 13th and 14th kings of Judah respectively. Bible characters can have complex layers, but Hezekiah was a king who tried to restore greatness to his kingdom, where his son Manasseh started his reign by undoing his father's work and creating places of worship for false idols such as Baal. In Jeremiah 15, Manasseh is described as being the one to blame for an upcoming 4 waves of destruction that the kingdom will face for the many violations against God during his particularly long reign. With that in mind, the invocation is a unique biblical reference meant to help Laura do what Hephzibah could not, kill her own child who might do horrible things in the future. This looks like a last resort that Laura found, but of course as she gives birth she sees her demonic child as an innocent looking girl, and instead decides to go on the run. Later in the first episode, Laura would refer to herself as a poser Wiccan, a reference to her younger self as opposed to the experienced person she is in the present. From this, we can infer that she was like many of the young girls who are taken with Wicca, adopting it as a cool spiritual label but not exploring it as much as she should, and certainly not doing her research before what little exploring she gets into, leading to her falling into Satan's hands. She was on the run up to the moment she gave birth, likely learning more in those 9 months than she had in her entire life about demons, as it would have been 9 months she spent trying to find a way to end an Antichrist pregnancy as well as avoid Satan himself. Along the way, she would collect a lot of spells and powers, much of which was influenced by Wicca in particular, but taking on a more serious and demonic edge. Her experience would grow for a while after Chrissy was born, but by the time that Chrissy was forming memories, Laura would have made the supernatural part of her life small enough to keep private from her, though we see throughout the show that it was and still is a part of her daily life. She becomes well enough versed in the demonic lore surrounding her daughter that she knows what to look out for. As a child, Chrissy was able to blend in with other children, but it was her first menstruation that truly activated her powers, and in the car before this, Laura seems really concerned about her certain side effects of puberty that Chrissy may be experiencing, wanting to get uncomfortably close to check for herself. This seems like a joke about an overprotective parent at first, and on one level it is, but what Laura is really checking for here is if Chrissy is about to have her Antichrist powers activated through puberty, which of course does end up happening shortly after. At this point, Laura feels so authentically experienced as a character, with very little narrative backstory needed. She has secret rooms in her home decked out with magic supplies, and even her guns come with a silver bullet at the end to completely kill otherwise impervious demons. There is even a demonic pet she keeps named Erwin, who acts as something of an inside guide for demonic information for Laura, an ally/prisoner she acquired somewhere along her way trying to hide from Satan. When Chrissy does activate her demonic powers, Laura has her salt her hair and burn a photo of herself. Salting is of course a common practice for self-protection that has been perpetuated by pop culture into its own modern norm at this point. The photo burning is an interesting spell, inspired by a lot of modern ideas of magic such as those found in Wicca, with photos being a pretty recent invention, but physical photographs you can burn becoming much less common now. When Chrissy lets her dad, Stooges, take her to the metaphysical realm, Laura pulls together a few quick ingredients, including some blood of Chrissy that she has saved from before. She creates a circle of salt around her, which is a standard practice. For those who aren't aware, I actually worked for a famous 80s psychic for 5 years before becoming a cartoon tuber, and while he dismissed a lot of Wicca as useful in practice, he always kept a box of salt in the trunk of his car, and it was always there for us to use when we got asked to help clear out a bad spirit in a house. We would salt windows and doors, a common practice to keep bad things out and making it easier to kill everything inside. But a circle of salt is often used to protect yourself from an evil influence, to keep an influence trapped within a circle, or, in more typical pop culture depictions, to cast just about any spell, the circle itself just being a circle of power. For Laura's spell to enter the metaphysical realm, she puts the bones of a rat into a lambskin condom, the lambskin being the important element here, this likely being the easiest way she could get lambskin that the spell calls for, though I don't think it actually is used in this spell, and instead she is trying to transfer the little skeleton with her. In the metaphysical realm, Laura repurposes the skeleton into a gun to fight the demons with. To get to Chrissy, Laura has to sacrifice a chicken while saying an incantation that is untranslatable as far as I can find, with the subtitles just calling calling it and many of her spells gibberish. This allows her soul to leave her body and go to the metaphysical realm. The Circle of Salt likely protects her body from other entities taking control of it, a problem we will see in later episodes when Chrissy tries to use her possession on others, leaving her body vacant for a demon to sneak up into. Laura's body is covered in tattoos of symbols and also words from various languages. And the one I want to examine today at the very least is this one on her chest, which seems to be ancient Hebrew. According to my Discord friend Robo, the general translation is something to the effect of to stop draining or to end draining, perhaps something involving magic. There's a lot of tattoos on her with different histories, and I look forward to seeing if they have any relevance to the show, and perhaps doing a dedicated video about them when the time comes. By the end of episode 1, Laura has agreed to some level of visitation with Satan for Chrissy. Satan exists only on the metaphysical realm and comes up through possession of humans and animals, but Laura is able to create contact lines to hell with little spells such as the one in her bathroom, where she uses a pentagram to talk through Satan's snake servant on glowing green water, a connection maintained by a candle and terminated by it going out. When Chrissy ends up possessed by a demon, Laura pulls out a forked wand she calls a soul stang, a Wiccan tool believed to have been invented by Robert Cochrane in the 1960s as part of the growing Wicca movement, though there are some references to it existing with different purposes in various cultures and mythologies. In the show, it serves the purpose of knocking the soul out of a body. However, with Chrissy having possessed someone else, it would only leave her body vacant after knocking the demon out of it. The stang is not being used alone, of course, and may serve the generic purpose of a wand it is meant to in real life, with this particular spell utilizing a glowing stone with runes and an Ouroboros on it. When she has exhausted these tools, but her neighbor becomes possessed, she invokes a simple chant that creates a complex fighting power set. Something a bit more action-focused than I was expecting for her character, whose magic has been overwhelmingly about exploiting little magical resources, as opposed to just having an OP fighting power set. After trying to get laid by a serial killer, an indication of her pattern that got her pregnant by Satan, the serial killer ends up dead at the hands of Laura's neighbor, and she has to dispose of the body. Using a dead rat and some weird liquid, she creates a portal to an abandoned corner of Earth, one that can only be accessed through portals so that even living creatures of demonic origin can be imprisoned there, such as the ego demon that Laura and Darlene talk to. The strange liquid is called Liquesco and is so unstable that any other liquid touching it can destroy the portal, leaving the girl stranded. Liquesco is a Latin word with various meanings, most of which being liquid-based, but with many of them being about degeneration. Regardless of what the liquid actually is, its name seems to stem from the fact that its weakness is other liquids, and not about what it is or its powers are. Like Erwin, the ego demon seems to be of use to Laura and maintains her little demonic dump. Laura insults him as much as she can, as anything remotely positive inflates his ego and turns him to a giant monster. When working for that famous 80s psychic, he explained to me that a lot of generic spirits had this sort of nature, that if they were just wandering metaphysical entities who could do very little on their own, and relied heavily on the power of belief, and often fear, in order to gain more power over the people the entity is trying to scare. This is a lot of cool magic. Most of it seems to be rooted in some fun, real-life historical and pop cultural references, and I'm excited to see more of the powers and spells that Laura has collected over the years as the series continues. Leave a comment down below letting me know your favorite spell so far, and don't forget to let me know any cool knowledge you may have about the spells yourself. See you guys next time!